Hi, this is Erica.
And I'm Rob.
And we're no experts, but today we are going to be talking about...
murder.
Right. Okay.
You want to make light of such a heavy topic?
Yeah, I guess. Murder has happened throughout all of history. I don't think this is anything new.
Since the beginning of life.
And I don't think I need to define what murder is. I think we all know. But I want to talk about different murders and stories about murders because I love watching documentaries about it. And, I some days just spend all my time on YouTube looking up different murder documentaries. Serial killers, kids who kill, couples who kill. There's all sorts of different, documentary-style shows that just,
cover the spectrum.
Yeah, cover the whole spectrum. Yeah. So,
I can vouch for that. She does watch a lot of murder-themed non-fiction, shall we say, right?
And fiction sometimes, too, because I love that.
Sometimes, but it's rare for you.
But it even gets to the point, I was saying before we started recording, that there's even, certain kinds of murders that I like to watch more than others. I don't like gunmen's. I think that's so weak.
Are you talking...
I like those close and personal kind of killers.
Okay, so something infamous like Columbine is less fascinating than something like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do like to watch things about serial killers more than I like to watch about just that one crime and passion. But
okay, so somebody who's habitual and consistent versus a massacre.
Yeah.
Just sort of somebody going down in a blaze of glory, whatever. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get you. Okay, so, let's start off there. What's the difference for you? Why is the secret mastermind creepy guy planning in his basement more appealing than the guy who just goes gung-ho and lights up a movie theater?
I really don't know. I feel like the one, I don't know. They're just not as interesting to me because... I don't know why. I just like the other ones a little grittier. More gruesome.
Okay. So I think you may have mentioned it a little bit earlier where you were saying more intimate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's clearly something beyond the death of a human being. It's more of the, let's say, that of course the psychology, but I guess the effect on the victim, right? Because if you just walk into a shopping mall and light up the store, then you don't know anything about those people or whatever. Whereas a serial killer who plots and captures and everything, it's more invading that person's persona. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of where you're getting your fascination?
I think so, and I find that serial killers are really interesting because they're otherwise pretty normal people. Aside from the fact that they're murdering people in secret. But, yeah, they're otherwise normal. I find that, somebody, when you think of, the Batman shooting, or even Columbine, or whatever, all those guys that plotted those things, they were all kind of weird. And a lot of times serial killers really aren't that weird.
On the surface.
They're obviously, they've got something wrong with them. But generally, a serial killer is going to be... they fit into society better, right? They're not outcasts. The way that those other mass shooting guys are.
Okay, all right. So to use some, I guess, flavorful language, it's more the guy is a wolf in sheep's clothing as opposed to just being a black sheep.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And it's fascinating to me because you always hear, somebody like Ted Bundy, right? Who is pretty infamous. So, if you don't know who Ted Bundy is, he raped and murdered several women. I don't think there was ever a final full count. But I think he was charged for at least 7 or 8 murders, but there was probably 75 or more. But nobody would have guessed it were him. He would be the last person that most people would have thought would do that. Just because of the way he presented himself in society.
Just like a friendly neighbor, average guy on the outside kind of thing?
Yeah, he was studying to be a lawyer. I think. And he was working, like, on different political campaigns across a few different states that he lived in. But he was really good looking for, at the time, and had lots of friends, had lots of connections in what he was doing. And nobody saw it coming, right? So to me, that's a little bit more fascinating. Even somebody like Edmund Kemper, who was really, really crazy. He was friends with the police officers. Everybody knew him as Friendly Ed down at the police bar, right? Like he was going home and doing unspeakable things to women, and even killed his own mother and chopped off her head and did really gross stuff with her head.
Sorry, this was Edward Kemper?
Edmund Kemper, yeah.
Edmund Kemper? Yeah. Okay, because didn't Ed Gein kill his own mom too?
Well, I think his mom died. It was kind of a Norman Bates sort of thing. He, kept her skin. He kept her.
Oh, so he didn't kill her. She died of natural causes, and he kept her around because he couldn't deal with the loss? Is that what was happening?
I'm not really sure about that. I think he was just really crazy. That's where, like, Ed Gein is where the human lampshade thing comes from.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of characters, so, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based on Ed Gein.
Loosely, yeah, I know. That's the one.
Norman Bates and Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, they were all based on Ed Gein.
They had mother issues, right?
Yeah, and I'm not, like, Ed Gein's not one that I really got into too much. But, yeah, he was crazy too. But he didn't murder very many people. If he maybe murdered one or two, but for sure, like, he was just digging up a lot of graves. That's where all that skin for the lampshades came from and stuff.
Oh, okay. So he was more creepy and disturbed than he was an actual serial killer.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Let's go back a bit to Jeffrey Dahmer and the other one. I forget
Ted
his name.
Bundy?
Right? No.
John Wayne Gacy.
Anyway, the guys that you were saying that were... you wouldn't expect it to be them because they were otherwise normal on the outside.
Oh, Edmund Kemper, yeah.
Edmund, okay. So, for guys like that, what do you think is their motivation? Like, obviously they have to stay normal on the outside to avoid getting caught. Mm-hmm. But what do you think is going on in their head as to why they have to murder at all? Like, if they've got life going on, right? They're charming, people like them, they got decent jobs, etc. What's with the killing?
Well, I don't really know too much of the psychology behind it, obviously. But I don't know. I have a feeling it's a bit of a compulsion. It's almost like somebody who has OCD. They have to do this, right? Like, and I think that is kind of how they feel about it. And once they start, it's like taking drugs. You need to keep doing it. You build up a tolerance, and then you want more, so you just keep your...
Yeah, okay. The addiction part, I get, like, the concept. But to just get started, like that first one, right? You're thinking it was a compulsion. Is it, like, crossed wiring in their brain? Is it triggered by something that happened to them when they were younger, or like typically?
I think it can be any of those things. It's really hard to say. They're all very different, right? Like, for somebody like Ted Bundy, I think he was like a classic sociopath. Knew what he was doing was wrong, didn't care, did it anyway. And plus he was very narcissistic, and like, that was his, like, form of control.
Okay, was he similar in the sense that he could blend into society and nobody really expected the crimes?
Ted Bundy? Yes, That was the first guy I talked about.
Okay, I was thinking of somebody else. That's okay.
But yeah, I think it's for somebody like Ted Bundy would be that even almost feels like he was entitled to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Like he had a God complex.
Yeah, like he had a right to do it. My favorite serial killer that I watch a lot of stuff about is Jeffrey Dahmer. And it's horrible what he did, and I shouldn't say he's my favorite, but, like, in terms of all the stories, one of the things that sticks out for...
You can have a favorite serial killer without being the serial killer yourself.
I know, but what always stuck out with me with Jeffrey Dahmer is that he had a fairly normal upbringing. Like, his parents were divorced, but they divorced when he was quite young, and I think pretty amicably. They maintained, like, a pretty friendly relationship for the sake of their kids, and he wasn't abused. he led just a pretty ordinary childhood and an ordinary life. And then when he got to high school, he had did his first murder. And I watched this one interview with him way, way back. Like, the interview took place way back in the 90s. And his dad was on there, and he said that looking back, there, like, in hindsight is 20/20, and there probably were things in his personality that really were red flags for what he would later become. But, there was nobody there to intervene or speak up and advocate for him to get the help he needed so that he could turn out to be a functional adult. Instead, he, it was swept under the rug or whatever, and he, they never dealt with it. So he grew up instead to become a serial killer. And that's why I work with little kids, and I think it's really important to just really be aware of those red flags and have some early intervention. But the reason why, Jeffrey Dahmer to me is a pure example of, how important early intervention is for kids. Okay, so he basically had a genetic predisposition toward it, right? It wasn't that he was bred in an environment, not that it cultivated murder or violence or anything like that, but he was in an environment that just didn't pick up on it, right? Like nobody really could tell what the warning signs are. It was just in his DNA. There was something in his brain that said, you got to start killing people. And I think that Jeffrey Dahmer, it wasn't so much that he grew up in an environment where they just ignored it, but can you imagine, even nowadays, and I think about this sometimes too, because I do work with kids and I think early intervention is important, but if I had a child of my own that maybe was showing red flags of being a sociopath or a psychopath and could grow up to be a serial killer, I don't think that I doubt that I would notice it either or acknowledge it. Because I think people don't want to believe that about their kids, right? Yeah, a lot of people are like that. They say, oh, that kind of stuff happens to other people. Yeah. Or my baby's a perfect little angel. He would never do something like that. Like, they don't believe that their kid would steal or kick another kid or whatever, let alone start killing people. Right. So they just put on the blinders and stuck their head in the sand. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it was anything neglectful, intentionally on the part of the parents. It's just the way people are. They don't want to believe their kid can be capable of such stuff. When did he grow up? What were his teenage years around? Probably in late 70s, early 80s. Okay. See, that makes even more sense actually, because especially in the 80s, mental illness was treated like a contagious disease. Mm-hmm. Right? You did not take your kids to therapy because then that's it. They were social outcasts for life. So that might have been it too. I know that you're saying not intentional, but let's call it intentional, but not malicious. It would be intentional, but out of fear of the social stigma of taking their kid to see a psychiatrist or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they, like you said, they swept it under the rug. And then whatever his compulsions or his motivations they fostered, and here we are. Okay, so what about other ones? What do you think is their motivation or their reason to start killing? Like I said, I think it's a compulsion that they have, and so when that compulsion gets so strong that they can't resist it anymore, they strike out and they do it. Is that compulsion again just a crossed wire in their brain? I don't really know. I don't really know how. Like I said, I haven't really researched too much about the psychology of it, but it really does seem like those serial killers that are the repeat killing, that there is something that has always been there, that they know has always been wrong, and they've always had that desire, right? So. Okay, so this is going to be controversial and it's probably going to piss off some people, but I'm going to draw the comparison to being gay, right? It's not so much these days, but back in the day, a lot of parents try to dissuade their children from being gay, or even if their parents didn't, the child always knew on some level that there was something off about themselves compared to what mainstream society would deem okay.
this is a touchy subject, but I think you get my point, right? Like, it's just something innate in them, and they just kind of knew at some point it was always there, and that's where what that compulsion is, and just one day they just give in. They've had enough, and they said, okay, I'm going to kill somebody. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
I think, that's kind of how I see it a lot of times, especially with the serial killers. I mean, the other kind of murders out there, like those crimes of passion, right? Where it's like spontaneous, hasn't been thought out, big fight happens, and somebody gets killed. Yeah. I don't think that those people necessarily had that compulsion always to kill, but they obviously...
Well, I mean... No, I know what you're saying. Like, they'd hit at a breaking point, right? Yeah. Like and that was just their brain's way of coping with the situation. Like, as an example, your first love. Mm-hmm. You wind up marrying her, and then she cheats on you. You're so heartbroken. You've never encountered that emotion, that level of pain before. You don't know what to do, so mm-hmm. you kill whoever is hurting you. Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's not a...
It's weird to me because I've been really, really angry before, but I've never wanted to murder someone. And when I hear about those... So, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were in New York for my friend's wedding this summer, and we watched all those... Like, that weekend, that guy had murdered his wife and 2 little girls, and his wife was pregnant. Like, the little girls were, like, 2 and 4 or something like that, and he just murdered them all.
I kind of remember that.
Like, this is a guy that was, like, really thought of well in the neighborhood and in the community. The couple seemed to be happy. They were having some money troubles, but everybody believed it to be, like, it was serious, but it wasn't that serious, I guess. Okay. You know what I mean? And, like, serious enough to, like, kill your family for life insurance. Well, so,
I mean, is there anything really that serious?
No, you know? Exactly. But, like, why? Like, why would he just, like, snap and kill? Like, it makes me wonder if we're, like, maybe we all have this murder thing. If this is, like, goes back to, like, our, you know, back to the caveman days for us, like, our ancestors. If we're just all, you know, just like a ticking time bomb waiting, and we may never do it. But it scares me. It scares me to think about it, because you never know. Like, do you think she thought that her husband was going to, like, snap and kill the whole family?
Obviously not. No, she wouldn't have been with him if she thought that was going to take place. I think that there's something back from the cave people days. It's in us, right? It's part of the survival instinct, which I can go off on a rant about the survival instinct for about a week and a half. I'm not going to now. Right. But yeah, it's about, you know, self-preservation, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, yeah, most people will say protect the family, right? But if the family is in a type of danger that you can't protect against, and you have the opportunity to save yourself at the cost of your family, some people might actually take that route. Yeah. Other people would sacrifice themselves if they thought there was even a chance to save their family, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the more selfish people will just say, okay, well, hell with my family.
There is one show that I like to watch from time to time, or there's 2 of them. One's called Couples Who Kill, and the other one is called Wicked Attraction. And the thing that I find fascinating about the stories on this show is that 2 people, normal people, well, otherwise normal people, meet, come together, form a relationship, murdering commences, having them to come together. So you think of something like Paul Bernardo, who we know Paul Bernardo was a rapist, but he never murdered anyone. Right. Carla Homolka had never done anything even close to murder. No. You marry these 2 together, they murder 3 kids. So I wonder what happens, because if you ever came home one day and was like, I want to go murder a guy, I wouldn't be like, fuck yeah, let's do it. No, I'd be like, you're insane. Please don't do that. And then if you came home later and said, I just murdered this guy, I'd be like, I'm calling the police. Like, this is weird. I don't understand why sometimes people, when they form these relationships, all of a sudden they, you know, they have this confidence to commit murder. I'm not saying everyone. Obviously, not every couple gets together and wants to do that, but the ones that do. Yeah,
I don't think it was as cut and dry as that. I don't think that they were playing house and then one day he just says, I'm going to bring this up and see how she reacts. I don't think that's what was going on. It would have been one of those things where his his narcissism played a huge role in their relationship, right? And that would lead him to try and control her all the time. And he probably cultivated the relationship to a point where she would do what she was told out of fear of repercussion, right? Like he might, even if it was just yelling and screaming, like I don't know that he was abusing her, like if he ever hit her or anything like that, but he might have just been verbally abusing her.
I think we do know that.
I don't remember. I don't know enough details of the story. Was he beating her up?
Oh, yeah. Like, there was a lot of domestic violence going on there, spousal abuse.
Okay, so that makes even more sense, though.
But my thing is that, I mean, obviously, like, the average person has never seen those tapes that they made. But she was just as much calling the shots as he was when it came to the rape and murder of those girls.
Okay, sure, but...
she drugged her own sister for him, so, like... I wonder what was that love that they had that drove her to be so compliant with him. And yes, there was some spousal abuse, but I mean...
Are you sure that it was love that motivated her to do that and not fear of him?
I really don't know, because I'm not inside their heads.
No, well,
I think I'm very biased against Karla Homolka and any excuse that she has, just because of the crimes that took place.
Well,
but
yeah, to be fair, I mean, ultimately she is guilty of it too. So any excuse she offers is BS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she cut that deal pretty fast. But then I think, like, years later down the road, just literally down the road from us, in Woodstock, was Tori Stafford, who was snatched by a couple, raped, and murdered. And, again, the girl that abducted Tori Stafford in Woodstock, I don't think would have ever done that had she not met Michael Rafferty, who raped and murdered her. And the girl that did it, I think her name was Terry Lynn McClintock, she, again, was just as involved in the whole thing as he was. So, I don't know, like, I don't understand what's going on there up in the brain that would make somebody that would otherwise never commit that crime get into this relationship and then all of a sudden...
Again, I don't think it's all of a sudden. But I'm going to ask you something. Like, you're privy to the inner workings of female minds more than I am, right? Like, obviously you being a woman, but in addition to that, talking to your friends, right? You'll have more intimate conversations with them than I would with most women. Is there I don't want to say trend, but is there a commonality, I guess, whereby women will do certain things to please their man because they don't have enough self-esteem to say no? Is there a certain level of that at all?
Do you mean like extreme things that could be illegal, but just in general?
No, just at all. Like,
I think so. I mean, it could even in our case. Like, I wanted something to have in common with you that we could share together, that we could both enjoy. I resisted it for a long time because I hated it, so I thought. But then I discovered my real boyfriend, Doctor Strange.
Okay.
And if it weren't for you, I don't think I would have ever endured those films like I felt like I was going to when we started watching them.
Right. Okay. And I get that. But see, your motivation is different, right? Your motivation is you want to have something else that we can connect on, right? So you gave it a shot.
Yes.
That's not quite what I'm talking about.
Well, but if you compare it, like, what if, like, Karla Homolka was just like, well, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, no, I get what you're saying, but what I'm asking is there a female commonality where they will do something that they know they hate just to keep the relationship intact? Right? And I don't mean something stupid like washes dirty underwear every week because otherwise he yells at her.
Right.
Right? But other things, like a little more, let's say, mentally painful. I'm trying to come up with an example and it's not coming to me, but you know what I mean.
Like not with my girlfriends. My girlfriends are pretty strong-minded, so if they really hate something, they're going to tell their spouses.
Okay, so
they hate it.
Let's say, even if it's something like, if her boyfriend is a sports nut and he has all his buddies over for the Super Bowl, right? And it's like, come on, honey, join us. And she couldn't possibly be bothered. Like, she just doesn't care to be there, doesn't hate sports or whatever.
But does it anyway?
And not so much forces her, but he makes her feel like crap if she says no. Mm-hmm. So she has to partake in the whole day, right? Making food and drinking beer with the guys and all that. Like, is there a time where women will do that? And
I suppose. And I think everybody does, not just women.
And pretend like they're enjoying themselves? As opposed to just sitting there pouting the whole time?
Yeah, and I think everyone does that. I mean, I think that's just a thing people do.
All right. Like, I'm just trying to see if maybe that's part of what was going on there, right? Let's take Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, right? Where it's, if her self-esteem was low enough when they met, and he was, cocky and good-looking or whatever, and she felt like she won the lottery when she met him, plus his narcissism, if he beat her self-esteem down to nothing, where she felt like that if she didn't do exactly as she was told, she was going to lose him, right? Is that enough to get her to participate in something like this? The fear of losing him, is it?
Yeah, I think, you hear about that a lot with people who've been abducted, right? They spend enough time, I forget what that's called, Stockholm Syndrome. You spend enough time with your captor, you start to believe that they're your protector, they're your friend, they're your family, right?
Do you think that maybe that plays a role in some of these couples who kill?
Yeah, it probably does. I just always find it bizarre. It's just what happened? Like, you were so nice, and then you met this person, and now you're a murderer. Like, it's fascinating to me that would happen. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. There are some that I've read, like Jasmine Richardson from British Columbia, I think, or Manitoba, somewhere out west. Anyway, she was 12 or 13 and met a 19-year-old guy, or 20-year-old guy, I can't remember.
Sorry, she was how old?
She was 12 or 13. Okay. She met some way older guy.
Yeah, she knows nothing.
She knows nothing. But she came up with the plan to kill her family so she could be with him, and he partook in it. He went and helped her murder everybody, including her 8-year-old brother. Slit his throat. She slit her 8-year-old brother's throat, and he beat the living hell out of her parents until they died. So, obviously there was something wrong with her. Well, she's already out of jail because she was a minor, right? So she went to jail.
There's something wrong with both of them.
For 10 years, she was out of jail. Yeah, there's something wrong with both of them. He obviously had something wrong with him if he wanted to date a 12-year-old.
Well, for one, but then to think that it was a good idea to beat 2 people to death?
For a 12-year-old.
For a 12-year-old? Well, not even just for a 12-year-old, just to beat 2 people to death, period. Like, there's something wrong there. There's, you get some wires crossed.
Yeah, I don't know, it's hard to say. But for the other half of this podcast, the thing I wanted to talk about is why us normal people are so fascinated with murder and serial killers and these kind of stories, especially since we would never go out and do it.
But they're everywhere. Like, even not just these documentaries, the news.
I know.
Every day, if there's a violent story, they'll put it on there because that's what people want to see. It's weird. Yeah,
it is, and I love watching it. Even it doesn't even have to be murder, but that R. Kelly thing I watched last week. Mm-hmm. That was an amazing documentary about the most horrible thing you've ever heard of. Some of the most horrible things you've ever heard of. There's a lot of horrible things out there, but but it was so, for me, I enjoyed myself thoroughly watching that.
Well, he was like the, that guy Castro in was it Cleveland or Chicago?
Yeah, but he's not, torturing them. Is so...
R. Kelly, you mean?
Yeah. Not the way that Ariel Castro guy
Ariel Castro, that's him. No, not to the same extent, but it was essentially the same situation. Yeah. He was holding these girls captive.
Yeah.
Right? And they were eventually... they developed Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was fascinating to me because I never knew the whole story about R. Kelly. I remember, that 15-year-old with getting peed on and stuff, but I didn't know,
how much worse it got?
How much worse it got, yeah, and how bad it was even before that. I didn't know that he had married that Aaliyah when she was 15 and had got her knocked up.
I remember her being a music artist. I don't remember them being a thing.
Well, she's the one that died in the plane crash. Do you remember?
Oh, maybe that's why I know the name.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just didn't know, and I found it was so fascinating, but it's horrible. It was, I think I watched that all in one night. It was all 6 episodes. It was such a good documentary, but it's because I'm fascinated by it all, and I love it. I love hearing stories about murder, and I could watch Dateline all day long and hear about all these things. Unsolved mysteries, when people either just go missing or like, just turn up dead and nobody ever knows what happened to them.
Yeah, the person got away with it.
Yeah, like JonBenet Ramsey. I will read and watch things about JonBenet Ramsey, and it still just blows my mind that they've never been able to find who killed her. And I don't know why. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I just enjoy watching them. So why do you think we're fascinated by this kind of stuff? Any of it?
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's not like you're a special case. There's so many of these movies and documentaries and all that because they make money. And they make money because people watch them.
Yeah.
Right? I think that, part of it is what you're looking at is the psychology, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to figure out what exactly would motivate somebody to do something like this. Like, that's a pretty extreme action to take for any reason.
Yeah.
Right? So what's going on here? I think that's a big part of it. I'm not an expert, but I think a different part of it is it's sort of, let's say, nurses your survival instinct, right? Because you're watching all these people get murdered and it wasn't you.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes you feel a little bit better that you're not in this type of situation where your life is threatened or whatever. Like, if you learn enough about these murderers, maybe on some level you're hoping to find a common trait or some red flags that you can pick up on later. So that way, if you meet a new person, you're less likely to get sucked into a situation like that, right? So again, it's that survival instinct thing.
I just remember when we were at that wedding in the summer and that girl was like really resisting hard getting into the back of that guy's car at the reception.
Oh, at the end, yeah.
And I was watching it go down, and like I took down that guy's license plate number. I got his name. I got his phone number.
Yeah, I remember.
Because I have watched enough episodes of Dateline to know that when a drunk girl is resisting that much, he could be a murderer.
There's probably a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember you were very concerned for her well-being.
I had a few.
No, I know. I get that. But you still had the presence of mind to be looking out for, right?
Yeah.
And I get that. No.
I mean, sometimes I think that maybe Dateline has kind of ruined me because I do get scared about random. Like, I always think somebody's been murdered.
Well,
if I can't get a hold of you, I'm like, somebody murdered Rob. He's not answering his phone. He's dead. He's in somebody's trunk.
That's a whole other conversation. No, I know. But it's because we have all these stories that people get panicked about it, right? Like, and a lot of the stories, especially the ones that they feature, are where the situation was so seemingly innocent.
Right.
Oh, he seemed like a nice, normal neighbor, or they were a happy couple until one day, and then the whole story twists, right?
Yeah.
And that makes you paranoid. It makes you fearful of everyone around you, because if these seemingly normal people could get away with it, who in my life that is seemingly normal might be this person? Right? So you never know.
I also think that for me, a lot of the times these stories, whether it's murder or serial killers or just like those stories you hear about crazy cults or sex crimes or whatever, that they're so unbelievable that they don't seem real. That the actions these people took, it doesn't seem real. It's almost like watching fiction play out.
A little too fantastic.
Right.
Like in the true sense of the word.
Yes. And like, remember when O.J. Simpson was on trial?
Yeah.
I was young. You were a little bit older. But even I remember that was like watching soaps on TV. That is what people were turning into. They weren't turning on their TV to watch whatever the hell was popular in 1995. Beverly Hills 90210.
Okay.
They were turning in to watch the O.J. Simpson trial as though it were a fictional show playing out. And it was very real. These were real people's lives that were affected by this.
Yeah.
But that's how people felt. It was the most highly rated television program.
Well,
at the time.
Yeah, but I mean, considering O.J.'s previous popularity, of course everybody's going to be glued to the TV. They want to see what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, like, it's on TV, right? It's real lives being affected, but for the home viewer, it's just another thing on TV. So it blurs that line. Yeah. Right? They don't really consider the consequences of what took place and what's about to happen. I mean, they do, but because it doesn't hit them directly, it's easier to take it as entertainment, right? So it's one of those things where, you don't know until you experience it.
I sometimes feel guilty that I'm so entertained, actually, by the murder of other people. You know what I mean? Like, I do feel bad. These are real people that have been murdered. So, But I mean, so much money's been made off of murder, it's ridiculous. Look at Making a Murderer. That just, like, probably, like, I don't know anyone who hasn't watched Making a Murderer.
Yeah, but then there's the theory that it's all made up too, right?
That's just our theory. Yeah, well, nobody else believes
that.
I
think it's more your theory than ours, but...
I don't think it's real.
I could see...
There is no Stephen Avery. He's a character.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm convinced of that, but I can honestly see valid arguments as to why you think that. Right?
Kathleen Zellner is real, though. I actually watched another documentary, it was a Dateline one, about this kid who went to work and then never left. Like, there was no footage of him leaving work. He just disappeared. They found some of his blood in the back of the grocery store he worked at, and they never were able to find his killer. Somebody did get arrested and is in jail, even though there was, like, almost zero evidence putting him there at the scene of the murder. And Kathleen Zellner ended up representing that guy who's in jail.
The accused.
Yeah. So she's the one who came in second season of Making a Murderer and had all those weird theories and different tests that she was doing. Okay. But anyways, she is real. She's a real lawyer, but...
That whole sequence of testing pissed me off because there were so many elements to her tests that were open to error and interpretation that it completely invalidated everything that they did and said. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. I could have done those tests and been this
we're not forensic experts, but it was pretty obvious to anybody who had half a brain that these tests were bullshit.
Yeah, they were all bogus.
Total bullshit.
But...
What do you think is going on as to why people are so fascinated? You know your perspective, but if you had to think about why other people might, what do you think?
Because a lot of people I know that watch the murder shows and stuff, like, that is so far out of our world, so far removed from who we are as people. And I think, like, it's, again, it almost plays out like fiction. Like, it's not real because it's something we're so far removed from that we don't know anyone that would commit murder. So we think.
So you think,
So we know of.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just like something that just doesn't happen in our life.
Well, okay, and that's fair. Like, it's kind of an escapism, sure. But why that subject, right? When there's all kinds of other escapism, like you have your reality shows and your soap operas and hell, animal documentaries, whatever, like anything. Everybody has their own escape for why they watch TV or movies. So what is it about the topic of murder documentaries, like, or real life murder, I guess?
Maybe because it's so, like, it feels so fictional, but the fact that it's not makes it more interesting. That you can't believe it's true. Like, okay. Oh my God, this is true. This happened.
Okay, all right. So because it feels surreal, would you say? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So. Okay, I kind of get where you're going with that. Yeah.
Before we head out here, though, my sister sent me this funny list of things, and it fits right in with this whole podcast. So I thought before we finish up, I would read it.
Okay.
So it's called "Things That I've Learned from Watching Dateline," and there's 10 things on the list. So number 1 is, if you have time-stamped VHS footage of yourself blowing out birthday candles, you'll probably be abducted. Sound true?
Okay.
Okay. Number 2, you'll never be murdered if you have more than 3 pictures of yourself. Number 3, if you have a smile that lights up the room, you'll eventually wind up covered in blood. Number 4, in the Midwest, there are no such things as loose-knit communities.
Okay.
They're all very tight-knit.
Right, I understand.
Number 5, you can't be murdered in your own home if you have furniture more recent than 1983.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Number 6, the best way to cope with your loved one's murder is by staring at a boat marina. They always are. They're always looking out into the water or looking at boats.
Oh, you mean like when they interview the victim's family or loved ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just have footage of them. They're always looking out into the water.
Okay.
Number 7, people only die on beige carpet.
For some reason, yeah.
Number 8, only perfect marriages end in strangulation.
Okay.
Yeah. See? Number 9, life insurance is just always a bad idea.
Right.
Number 10, if someone ever says never in a million years, it actually means next April.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Very important things that we learn from Dateline.
Yeah, that is a pretty good list.
Anyways, this was just a fun episode for me to talk about one of my biggest interests, so...
I'm sure we'll revisit it at some point in
Probably.
the future. Yeah.
I would love to just, do, one murder case that I find really interesting and just, really talk about it.
Hey, that's
Those
fair.
are my favorite podcasts. My favorite one that we listen to is Generation Y, or that I listen to, Rob doesn't, but it's all about true crime, and it's amazing. So, hopefully maybe I can do a little episode like they do.
Sure.
Claim one murder one time.
Yeah, hey, the world is your oyster.
Right.
Do whatever you like.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap it up here. But thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions for other topics you want us to talk about, just leave them in the comments below.
Yeah, and if you have beige carpeting, replace it now.
Yep. And what's another one that I can remind you of?
You forgot the list already?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, just don't get life insurance, guys. Just don't. Just don't. Don't take out a policy because somebody's going to mysteriously die after.
And if you have a smile that lights up a room, black out a tooth or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
That's enough. Okay, so until next time, just remember we're no experts. You got nothing.
I got nothing. Have a great night.
No.
Again.
We're not doing that again.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.